When it comes to striped bass trolling, you can really divide the techniques into two separate categories. You've got the more nuanced techniques like bunker spoons and tube and worm, and they're going to require specialized gear like wire line or lead core line, or very specialized long limber trolling rods for the bunker spoons. And then you have your more simple but still very effective techniques, and those include mojo rigs and deep diving swimming plugs. So for these two techniques, you don't need specialized gear. You can pretty much use the same rod and reel that you'd use for chunking or for live bait for striped bass. Just clip on a mojo rig or a deep diver, and that's going to be just as effective. So the mojo rig is something that became very popular about 10 years ago. Deep divers, however, have been a striper trolling staple for as long as I've been striped bass fishing. The appeal of these lures is that one, they have a very lifelike profile and presentation in the water, and two, they will work not only on deep bass that are hugging the bottom, but they're also very effective on suspended fish. And that's a situation that Chris Megan and I ran into earlier this spring when we were looking for some striped bass in Cape Cod Bay. We tried to find them close to shore, but it turns out they were suspended over 100 feet of water in Cape Cod Bay. And the only way to get those fish to bite was to troll deep diving plugs through them. We tried live bunker, we tried jigging, but these were fast moving schools over deep water, and trolling the deep divers was by far the most effective technique. Now for trolling deep divers, you don't need specialized gear, but you do need to have gear that's capable of handling heavy resistance. A lure, this right here is the Rapala X-Rap 30. And the X-Rap 30 and the X-Rap 20 are pretty much the sweet spot for striped bass. So these are, as their names would imply, this one dives up to 30 feet. This bait here dives up to 20 feet. I like the X-Rap 30 because it gives me the option to go a little bit deeper, and it's a larger profile, which if you're looking for big striped bass, that never hurts. But if you're in shallower water closer to shore, the X-Rap 20, even the X-Rap 15 might be your best option, so you're not constantly digging into the bottom. But when you see this big lip here, that's going to put a lot of resistance on the rod. So this is not a light tackle technique. You're using gear, probably 30-pound class gear. On that particular trip, Chris and I were using the new St. Croix Rift Salt, and a rod that was rated for 15 to 50-pound test, and that was absolutely perfect for it. Those rods had a bit more of a moderate action, which was very forgiving when trolling 4 to 5 knots with these deep divers, and also it showed the vibration of the lure to let us know that it was swimming well. When you have a good vibration, constant vibration, that means the lure is swimming true, it's looking lifelike. But if you see a change in that rhythm, could mean that the lure is fouled, could mean that it's covered in weeds, so it's a good time to go and check your lure. And when you are checking these lures, do yourself a favor and take the boat out of gear. They're going to dig right up to the point that you get them to the boat, and then if you try to lift them out of the water with a big bend in the rod, it's going to slingshot out, could create a very dangerous situation. When it comes to selecting the right deep diving plug for a day of fishing, you have a great variety of colors to choose from with these Rapala X-Raps. Very lifelike. They even have a bunker pattern, a green mackerel pattern, as well as more kind of impressionistic colors like eye-grabbing colors like this orange over chartreuse. That's the one Chris and I actually had a lot of luck with out in Cape Cod Bay. But more important than the color is going to be making sure your lure is getting to the right depth. So that's the first thing I look for. I want to make sure that my lure is getting to the level of the fish. In order to know where the fish are holding, you're going to want to work with your electronics. On that day in Cape Cod Bay, the fish were suspended 20 to 40 feet down, which made the X-Rap 30 the perfect lure. Now, just sending this out behind the boat doesn't mean it's going to get to 30 feet. There's a lot that factors how deep a deep diver will swim. One is the line diameter because of the water resistance. Two, how much line you have out. And then three, how fast you're trolling. The X-Rap will swim true at trolling speeds up to 13 knots. Now, you'll never need to go that fast for striped bass, but you will be going typically 4 to 5 knots when trolling these. When it comes to line, I would go as light as 30 or as heavy as 50-pound test, but I wouldn't go outside that. Lines in that range are going to be thin enough so that you can get down deep without any extra water resistance, and they're going to be strong enough to handle a big striped bass going and hitting that lure while you're trolling at 5 knots. As for setting the line out, about 100 feet, maybe 75 feet seems to be enough to get that lure to swim at depth. Putting out a little more line may help it get deeper, but you do hit a point of diminishing returns as soon as that lure gets too far away from the boat. One, hook sets may not be as effective when the fish hits it, and two, it's more likely to tangle not only with your other lures, but with other boats. We were trolling in a pretty dense fleet that day, so we had to keep our lures on a shorter leash. But with the thin diameter line and by trolling at 5 knots, they were still able to get down to the fish. When trolling these lures, you don't want to go in a straight line. The occasional turn will add action to them because the inside lure will slow down and lift up a little bit while the outside lure speeds up and digs a little bit deeper. And sometimes that change in retrieve is what triggers the striped bass to bite. For the reel for trolling deep divers, you want a reel that's going to have kind of a lower gear. You don't need the high speed quite as much, but something with some cranking power. 1 for adjusting the lure as you're trolling, and 2 for fighting the fish. And whenever you're inshore trolling, I like reels with a level wind. Helps keep the line lay even, and that's something you don't have to worry about when you're fighting a fish. On that particular trip, we were using Shimano Takotas, and that is one of their trolling reels. It is a star drag reel with a level wind, great cranking power, perfect for trolling for striped bass. For leader, 6 to 8 feet of 40 to 60 pound test mono or fluorocarbon is great. You can use a barrel swivel as a break point between the braided line and the leader, and that may help reduce line twist a little bit, but a true swimming deep diving plug isn't going to twist your line up too much. So you can get away with an FG knot or a uni-to-uni knot or whatever braid to mono connection you're comfortable with tying. Most anglers prefer to tie direct to their deep diver plugs rather than using, say, a Tactical Angler's power clip or something like that. These Rapala X-Wrap Magnums come with a solid ring as a line attachment point, and to attach to that you want to use a Palomar or a clinch knot to your monofilament or fluorocarbon leader. Now for a deep diver trolling spread, if you're out fishing for suspended striped bass over deep water like Chris Megan and I were, a 2-rod spread is pretty much all you need. Send out 2 lures. You could use one X-Wrap 30 to get to 30 feet, or an X-Wrap 20 to get to 20 feet if you wanted to cover 2 different parts of the water column, or 2 X-Wrap 30s if you've already dialed in where the fish are and you want to show them a couple different colors. But mix that up until you find what the fish are interested in. If you're closer to shore and in shallow water where the bass are hugging the bottom and suspended, you could even send out deep divers in conjunction with Mojo rigs. Now the ideal Mojo trolling speed is 3 to 4 knots, while the ideal deep diver speed is 4 to 5 knots. So they do have some overlap there, and the fish will let you know what they're into. If they want the Mojo rig, you can switch the whole spread over to that and slow down your trolling speed. More interested in the deep divers, speed up and keep those 2 deep divers out there. For more information on trolling deep divers for striped bass, visit onthewater.com, and be sure to check out this episode of On the Water's Angling Adventures coming in winter 2023.